Today is all about the cooling system. I'm going to go over what modifications I've done in the past and what upgrades I have planned to make sure that this engine stays running cool, so stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. In some of the earlier Autocross videos, I've kind of briefly mentioned that the car is getting pretty warm during the events, and yeah, the ambient temperature has been into the upper 90s and humidity has been pretty high, but the coolant temperature starts off good, but quickly builds up into the 220, 230 kind of temp range, which is not really where I want the car to be. It hasn't actually overheated during any of the events, like actually bubble over the coolant, but it has gotten quite warm. And I actually have like the fan set kind of low to turn on, I think at like 190 degrees, which is pretty low, and it should be able to kind of hold it there, but it's not. And during the Autocross, we are, doing a lot of full throttle, a lot of high power kind of pulls, and it's just not able to keep up. I think part of it is due to the new engine. This new engine is more powerful, so it's just putting a lot more heat into the cooling system, and the cooling system just can't get rid of it as efficiently. Driving on the street, no problems at all. It drives perfectly. Sitting in stop and go traffic, it does perfectly. So it's not really an issue of at lower power. It's at this higher power that it just can't keep cooling back down. Things that I have already done. So the front is all ducted. So all the air comes in through here, is ducted into the radiator. There's no more of the duct bill on the bottom because I do put a splitter on the car and it blocks that all off. So the whole front is all ducted to go through the radiator. Yeah, maybe that opening is a little bit small. I will address that if need be, but for right now, since driving on the street, it stays cool. I'm kind of thinking that the opening is sufficient for what I need at the moment, but if we need to, we can open that up, figure out, cut up the bumper or something like that. For the engine fan, you've seen that I've recently kind of Frankenstein engine fan together. So it's the SN95 housing and fan blade, but then a motor from Taurus fan, I believe, and then the controller from Crown Vic. So it's all working, it turns on properly. I think it's getting to the max speed. It's something that I might try to test to figure out to make sure that we are getting to the max capable speed that motor is capable of. But for what I think that is sufficient at the moment. It is turning on at the right temperature. It is blowing a lot of air. So I don't think that is the problem. And it does cool back down. It's just not cooling down enough, and definitely not on course. So the courses have been only like 30 seconds to 1 minute long. And in that time, I'm going up 10, 20 degrees in coolant temperature, and it's just not able to really bring it back down quickly before the next run. So the temperature just keeps building in between each run. And I've had to start spraying down the radiator with the water hose, which I normally am cooling down the tires, but now I'm also cooling down the engine as well. So we do want to try to not be wasting water on doing the cooling system and keep all the water for the tires. Then the water pump is brand new, so I don't really have any concerns there that it's not flowing enough coolant. I think that's good. The thermostat, no idea. No idea what thermostat is in there, when it was replaced. That portion of the engine I didn't build, and when I did have to take this engine apart and rebuild it, I actually did not break open that thermostat housing at all, so no idea what thermostat is in there. But we will figure that out today. Let me get the coolant all drained out, start pulling things apart, and then we will discuss the upgrades that are then going to be going back into this car. Let me get to work. All right, everything is taken out. I never seem to be able to remove coolant without making a mess all over the floor. I thought I actually did pretty good this time. I had everything actually in the container, and then it turns out my container had a leak in the bottom and the coolant still got all over the floor. So that was fun to all clean up, but we're all cleaned up now. Luckily, Ashley got me that mop and bucket set for Christmas one year, so able to make short work of getting all the coolant cleaned up. Now to the car. So the radiator is all out, the stock one. So I was just running a stock radiator. I know it's a performance engine, performance car, but that radiator has done well for me. It's given me no problems with the other engine, but this engine being a little bit more powerful. Yeah. So that's out. That's at least a good reserve or sell or something, or cut it up and take it to the scrapyard. I don't know. All right, now for the radiator setup that's going to be going into the car. So we are going to be going with a SVE. This is a 3-core, all aluminum. So it will be a little bit lighter, which is nice, but a lot more coolant capacity, I should say. They say increased flow, but I don't think you'll really get that much increased flow. I mean, if it's non-restrictive, then you should probably get some more flow, but we'll have a lot more capacity, which is going to be really good. So I think that was what was kind of missing with this setup, was just having the coolant capacity to try to keep the engine actually cool. So this is a direct swap unit. It has the poke feet on the bottom, so it will slot right in. I already got the fan set up on there. So that's the fan setup that I had mentioned before with the S95 with the controller from a Crown Vic. So this will be able to be just a drop-in unit, and we can then start getting everything buttoned back up to go in, which is going to be real nice. It fits in there perfectly with even with the shrouding that I have, it looks like. So everything is exactly the same size as the stock unit, which is ideal since that's what it was supposed to be. It's supposed to replace is a stock radiator. It does stick out. Since it's thicker, it does stick out further towards the engine. So we are really tight on our clearances for the fan setup. Might have to readjust the controller that's on there a little bit, but we'll see once we get the top mounts in there. We might be okay, but definitely we'll need to check that. That's not something that is typical, obviously, since that controller I put on there, but normally it looks like there should be plenty of clearance between the engine and the fan setup, but since I have a little bit of a different setup, it's a little tight in there, but we'll get that figured out. Time for the thermostat now. So the one that came out of the car is the standard one. So it's just a 195 Fahrenheit, which means that it starts to open at 195 and then will be fully open, usually about 20 degrees higher. So that'd be like 215 is when this would be fully open. So me setting the engine fan to 190 is not really doing anything because the thermostat isn't even open at that temperature. So yeah, I'm turning it on at 190, but it's not even flowing any coolant through there until that thermostat starts to open, and then at full flow, 215 is where we'll actually start getting really good cooling going on, hopefully. But yeah, I was seeing like 230, close to 240 temperature. So that was also telling me that things just weren't really working too much there. But I'm going to go to a 180 thermostat just to give me a little bit more headroom. Not so much that I really need it to run cooler. It's just to give me a little bit more headroom, I think. So this is 180. So we'll start opening at 180 degrees and be fully open at 200 degrees or thereabouts. What I set the engine fan to, I'm not quite sure. I might keep it at 190. I might be able to bump it up a little bit. We'll just see how things are actually cooling. But I think 190 with a 180 thermostat is probably a pretty good place to start at. but we'll really see once we have everything installed, are running the car, and can kind of see what our temperatures are getting to. So time to get this installed. Remember, this gets a gasket on it and then also gets some RTV, I believe, around the edges to seal it all up. So we will get this installed, and then we are close to finishing up the car. Overall, this swap is, you know, really easy. It's just taking out parts, put in a few ones in. The coolant is really the biggest headache of draining the coolant, dealing with coolant, putting new coolant in. I really hate having, I try to reuse the coolant if I can. If it still looks clean, try to filter it, 'cause getting rid of coolant is always a problem. I don't have another Autocross coming up right away to be able to test out the radiator and the thermostat. We have one in August. August is usually really hot as well, so we'll be able to really be able to tell if there's any kind of cooling change by putting these in. There should be. I mean, that is a real big radiator change and a lot more capacity, and then a big drop in the thermostat setting. So that should all equate to lower coolant temperatures. Not going to bore you guys with me just putting everything back together and filling up the coolant. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Later.